Hello, y'all. Hello. Welcome back to What's Popping. This is another episode. Welcome back. I just updated my homecoming episode last week, and here we go again. I try to update once every week now that I am freshly in town, right? I am just making my comeback. I want to be hard driving. I want to be enthusiastic. I want to try to pick up some steam. So good luck. Good luck to me, okay? So today it's August 14th and I'm recording this at night, which has a lot to do with, I'm not gonna lie, my procrastination. And also I did this because I was waiting for a big data. So I just checked Maoyan Pro and I just found out that this big blockbuster movie that we're going to talk about tonight just had a little bit more than 55 million RMB in box office. So that's quite a big number for a first day performance for an American movie. So we are going to talk about nothing other than The Odyssey, right? I guess you know that already. I mean, it's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. One thing that I think nobody literally missed out on was this interview between a Chinese Beijing-based podcaster called Zhong Shu and this high-profile famous American director Christopher Nolan, right? This interview was quite a hit, not even within China, but also across social media worldwide. And that was quite a phenomenon. I guess it was nobody's expectation, but it just so happened. People got to talk about this movie a little bit more, thanks to that, of course. So all of a sudden, you will come across this big episode of that very interview on platforms like 小宇宙. This movie is on everyone's lips, so it's kind of unavoidable. And I have to say that kind of lead up is very helpful for a movie that was trying to desperately hold on to this Chinese market, right? So I bet you guys already know a little bit of that. I mean, I haven't watched it yet, even though this is the first day, but you know, I am always late for things and I want to wait, but I'm still going to talk about it somehow. So bear with me. I am none the wiser. If you have watched this film, just send me an email, okay? Just forgot to mention last episode that I also have an email. So if you want to send some suggestions or if you want to say anything, just talk to me, okay? Just write me an email in this old-fashioned way. I think it's so cozy. Go to whatspopping@126.com. Send me anything at all. So I want to know what you think about this movie if you have watched it. I am kind of looking forward to it. Mind you, this movie came out a little bit earlier in American markets and also other overseas markets, right? And somehow we're kind of late, but I guess, you know, good things come to those who wait. But finally, it's here. We have our first article from Variety. The title is The Odyssey says 20,000 screen China release, including near total IMAX commitment. And now grab your popcorn, let's get into it. Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey will open on more than 20,000 screens across mainland China, including some 90% of the territory's IMAX footprint of nearly 800 sites, distributor data shows. Pre-sale box office of the Universal title reached 39.5 million RMB, or some $5.9 million as of August 12th, Beijing time, with combined preview and pre-sale grosses hitting 91 million RMB, or some $13.5 million ahead of the film's August 14th wide release in the Middle Kingdom, per ticketing agency Maoyan. Maoyan Pro is forecasting an opening day gross of 70.4 million RMB, or some $10.4 million for the film. In parentheses, now in hindsight, this number should be somewhere around 55. Let's get back to it. The IMAX allocation will hold even as Spider-Man Brand New Day continues its successful run in Chinese theaters, with no reduction planned to the Odyssey screen count, IMAX has confirmed. Nolan traveled to China with producer Emma Thomas and stars Matt Damon and Charlize Theron for a multi-stop publicity tour. The visit opened with a photo call at a Beijing courtyard centered on a maple tree more than 100 years ago, where Thomas, Theron, and Damon surprised Nolan with a birthday cake and led a serenade for the director. Nolan completed 2 major print interviews at the stop, while Theron and Damon met with 4 content creators whose combined social media following exceeds 100 million. The tour continued with a fan screening at Universal Beijing Resort's Universal City Walk Cinema, organized with the platform RedNote, China's answer to Instagram. Hundreds of influencers and film fans attended a Q&A with the talent, and the event generated more than 10 trending topics on the platform within hours. Nolan, Thomas, Damon, and Theron also attended The Odyssey's China premiere on July 30th at the China National Film Museum on an IMAX GT certified screen. A photo call in front of roughly 500 fans and media outlets preceded a moderated Q&A for press and VIPs, and hashtags The Odyssey movie and The Odyssey China premiere trended on Weibo within 2 hours. The talent also took part in a press and content creator junket with an estimated combined reach of 1 billion viewers, readers, and users. A separate sit-down during the trip, Nolan's interview with Beijing-based podcaster Zhong Shu has since gone viral online, drawing praise for its philosophical depth on the film's themes. Adrian Tong, senior analyst at research company Media Partners China, points to Nolan's own China box office history as the relevant yardstick. Oppenheimer finished around $61 million in mainland China, with Tenet landing in similar territory, and Mao Yan logged more than 250,000 want-to-see registrations for The Odyssey before pre-sales opened. A 9-figure run will be exceptional, Tong tells Variety, since little from Hollywood outside the biggest franchise titles reaches that level in China anymore. Near-total IMAX network commitments are usually reserved for the biggest local titles, making the allocation for a Hollywood film unusual in a current market. But it's the rational response to observable demand plus favorable economics, Tong says, pointing to how Nolan's films consistently over-index on the IMAX format in China. Spider-Man Brand New Day has surpassed $200 million in China in 16 days of release, though no other newly released international film in 2026 has approached that mark, with the rest of the Hollywood slate landing mostly in the 100 million RMB to 310 million RMB, or some $14.8 million to $64 million range. Tong says the market hasn't closed to Hollywood so much as become extremely selective, adding the path to sustainable blockbuster success is now narrower and far steeper to navigate. All right. So it seems like Variety is very optimistic about this movie's performance in China, and I'm not even surprised. I mean, this is a global phenomenon, so it would make a lot of sense that this movie is going to sit well with the Chinese audience. But I like to play the devil's advocate right here. I am skeptical, okay? But I'm going to save it for later. I want to talk about how this movie has been performing today. This is very interesting and very important opening day in mainland China. And let's look at Mao Yan. So according to Mao Yan data, Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey took in roughly a little bit more than 55 million yuan on its opening day in mainland China. The film secured around 14.8% of total screenings across this country. Its average audience per show stood at 12 people with an occupancy rate of 7.8%. Before official release, preview screenings were largely sold out. In major cities, Mao Yan projects its final mainland box office to hit about 788 million yuan. Though it got off to a solid start, it faces stiff summer season competition from other hit films, which is what I am going to talk about next. So we are seeing a potential success for this movie as of now, according to today's data. It's this very, very good performance, by the way, even though it wasn't necessarily as amazing as Brand New Day but I would say yes. At least this is not a dumpster fire performance, right? I mean, China is now somewhat disenchanted from American movies in a way. So I was actually worried that there might be some issues. Like, probably we just changed. Seems like we're still very appreciative of Nolan. I think also a lot of people really think of Nolan as a very huge, very much high profile, and also trustworthy brand almost, which is very funny because this hasn't been the case. I think it wasn't this case a long time ago, right? It's especially in our living memory. I think it's like we used to think that studios were brands, right? But now I think a lot of global, phenomenal directors have very strong pull in box office. People trust them. People will go to the cinemas because of them. Sometimes even when they don't know much about this movie. I mean, this movie by definition could be a little highbrow, even though of course this is a commercial film. How highbrow can it possibly be? But I mean, it can be intimidating. This very title and all the setup is a little far away, especially for Chinese mainstream culture, I would say, right? We don't know much. We don't know jack shit about ancient Greek history or stuff like that, right? I mean, I am very much uneducated in that sense. I don't know much, and I am all right with it, but I mean, this is kind of the reason why I wasn't necessarily very much pulled to it until this ubiquitous interview that I came across, like I said earlier, between Zhongshu and Nolan. And then I started to realize that it could be something that would appeal to me potentially. So that was why I started to look into this very film and started to do a little bit of research and started to feel like I was a little interested in it. But, anyways, what I'm trying to say is the very title and everything, the exteriors weren't necessarily in Chinese people's wheelhouse, right? But somehow I think a lot of Chinese moviegoers are very much buying into this, in my opinion, primarily because of this personal brand, which is now trusted among Chinese moviegoers in a way, right? So I'm not even surprised now that I think about Nolan's influence and sway in Chinese moviegoers' mind, which is all right. I think, you chase stars, I chase stars. We just do it in different ways. Generally, if you are a fangirl, I think you're somehow despised. But if you are a moviegoer who worships Nolan, I think you seem to be snobbish about it. I'm not. I'm sorry to be a hater, but you seem to feel good about it, right? Let me rephrase it. You seem to feel good about it. And somehow you're also going to think that other people think you are bougie, that you have taste, and you're not like those lowest common denominator type. I mean, all this shit has a lot to do with snobbishness and I'm better than you energy for some people. For some people, I hate to be a hater, right? I hate to be judgmental and I hate to give sweeping conclusions. So I am just going to put it out that, you know what? Generally, people feel good about putting Nolan on a pedestal and going to the cinema because of him to pay tributes to to splurge a little bit for my favorite movie maker, which is cool, which is totally cool. But like I said earlier, it's not like this blockbuster juggernaut alongside with this very successful recent movie, Spider-Man, they could rest assured right? We're still seeing pretty strong offensive from the Chinese movies side. So for now, in Chinese local cinemas, we actually have a lot of Chinese domestic films in cinemas that are selling very well. One of which being this new film that just came out recently, which is called, interestingly, 欢迎来龙餐馆. Right, I believe this is a comic show, and it features Sheng Teng, which is, of course, a big box office pull again, which has a lot to do with what I just said earlier. It's funny how this echoes back to it. So I just said that Nolan has a great appeal to a lot of moviegoers. Shen Teng is also very similar in that case. Shen Teng, alongside with Ma Li, has been considered to be this dynamic duo in this comic world. Whenever you see Shen Teng or Ma Li, or ideally the both of them, you feel like this is a huge guarantee that this has gotta be funny. This has gotta be funny. And I am going to watch it because I'm going to blast out laughing alongside with other audiences so that I don't feel weird about it in the cinema. But yeah, I think nowadays it's just normal, even though I still think it's a little weird that we go to those personal brands and we trust them and we pay for them. We open up our purse strings and be like, take my money away, take it please. I think this is really my case as well. Whenever I see Shen Teng or Ma Li, I think I would also like to show my support because I enjoy their humor and I think they're very talented for sure. So back to my topic, I went off on a tangent, sorry. So 欢迎来龙餐馆 topped the chart of today's box office. It grossed a little bit more than 100 million Chinese yuan today, and now on its fourth day of release, total box office hit a little bit more than 533 million Chinese yuan, and that's pretty good performance overall. We also have Baxian, a Chinese-made cartoon movie about an ancient Chinese myth and tale, was also a very competitive movie. So today, on its 28th day of release, it grossed a little bit more than 18 million Chinese yuan, and that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Very decent. And also we have 功夫女足, which grossed more than 2 billion Chinese yuan on its 35th day of release. So overall, as you can see, we have also a very competitive slate in Chinese local movie making. And then you can also call them in some way juggernauts or blockbusters, even though, of course, they don't have this global influence as do those movies that I just mentioned, especially what we're talking about today, Odyssey. But as you can see, this was not the case several years ago. And now somehow Chinese movies are entering into this sweet spot. And on quite the contrary, American movies are now entering into this, no pun intended, Odyssey period. I hate to bring this up, but I know this is a cheesy topic, but Odyssey period. I mean, this echoes perfectly with our topic today, right? The Odyssey. And then we have Odyssey period. Somehow stars are aligning. In China, we have been talking about this in our online social media narratives, right? Odyssey period, everybody's going through some sort of Odyssey period. I'm going through this Odyssey period because I went through some traumas. And then people start to share their personal stories and then how they rose above it or that how they are dealing with it. But generally, I think there is this shared common collective sentiment towards misery, towards I am just having a hard time. And I'm so glad that I can somehow relate to other people or that other people can relate to me. because this is just a very common human emotion, right? Honestly, I was not a fan of Odyssey period, this very coinage of this very phrase, but now that I look back to it, I think this is a very beautiful coincidence because this phrase was popularized long before this very movie came out in China, right? And now somehow I am seeing a very interesting coincidence, which is that this mere movie is happening against the background of American movies going into this Odyssey period, in my opinion, in my personal humble opinion. You can just still say that American movies are doing great, and I think they still slay. I mean, I respect that. I respect that. This is just my personal observation, okay? But I want to talk about Odyssey period first. Odyssey period obviously comes from Odyssey. Odyssey is basically the story or the myth of Odysseus. Odysseus, right? So Odyssey was actually written by Homer. This is basically Homer's ancient Greek epic poem, and it talks about this protagonist, Odysseus, who is also our protagonist in this very movie, who was this hero of Trojan War. The Trojan War happened a long time ago, right? He fought the war, and then afterwards, it took him 10 long, tremendous, troublesome years to sail back to his home island. So now Odyssey is being used to refer to the period where you have to navigate through things, a long journey with a lot of adventures or difficulties. I think this kind of depicts exactly what American movies in China are feeling, in my opinion, again. Because now that we are seeing some American blockbusters don't even enter Chinese markets, and when some of them do, you see them underperform. And it's not even because of geopolitics. Sometimes this happens on a larger scale. This is quite an epidemic. This is not endemic to one single American film. All right, so let me give you some statistics. First, we have Doom Part 2, which came out in 2024. Its worldwide gross was 711 million US dollars, a global critical and commercial hit. But in China, mainland, it only grossed around 320 million RMB. Even though it's respectable, its China share of total revenue was far smaller than earlier Hollywood sci-fi franchises. Second, we have Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. In 2023, its worldwide gross was 441 million US dollars. It was a very steady international turnout outside of China. And then mainland China grossed 655 million RMB. Once dominant in China, the franchise saw a sharp local drop, even as it kept global commercial viability. Thirdly, Captain America: Brave New World 2025. It enjoyed a global gross of close to 420 million US dollars. But in China, the box office performance was merely 148 million RMB. Seems like people were not buying into this new Captain America. Fourthly, Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 2 2025 had a global gross of over 580 million US dollars, well received. But in mainland China, it only grossed roughly 410 million RMB. And I don't even have to tell you because that will be me stating the obvious that these movies are still global spectacles and they have very huge global influence. And back then, you would think that China will also do the same as other markets did. But you see in recent years, China seems to have a different taste or that China has been moving on a little bit. Very interesting. So these are only a fraction of examples of how American movies are being increasingly sluggish in this once very much receiving markets, whereas Chinese markets are considerably very much appreciative of its domestic movies. And again, I don't have to tell you that Noja made history with Chinese and global box office records. It was a film that was once considered to be an underdog, but turned out to be an actual dark horse. So we have this increasingly apparent dichotomy between Chinese-made movies and American movies in China. And then exactly why? I'm no analyst and I'm not even a movie buff, but let's check out what Western media said about this. And now we have another article from Guardian. I'm going to read you an excerpt of this. Okay, I'm not going to read you the whole thing, it was pretty long. It's titled, With Hollywood Struggling in China, Can the Odyssey Draw a Crowd? And now grab your popcorn and let's get into it. The Odyssey's weekend sneak preview sold out, and it has since topped the most anticipated ranking on Maoyan, China's largest ticketing platform. But its launch comes at a time when Western productions have struggled at the box office. Hollywood once saw China as a huge potential market for boosting box office sales. Chinese local titles have accounted for about 80% of annual box office revenue in recent years, as China moviegoers have increasingly favored homegrown films amid government efforts to promote domestic cinema. As China seeks to boost consumer spending, Hollywood films have returned to Chinese cinemas. Fewer than 10 Hollywood films have cracked China's box office top 10 over the past 5 years. But some experts say Nolan's epics hold a special place among Chinese audiences. Nolan is treated by a lot of Chinese audiences almost like a standalone brand, says Dr. Hao Wei-ing, senior lecturer at the University of Westminster, whose research focuses on cinema in the Sinosphere. Because we have a lot of middle-class educated urban elites who are now more demanding of cinema, they no longer just want usual action thrillers, Ing says. Nolan's last film Oppenheimer grossed about 550 million yuan, or some $66 million following its 2023 release in China, making it one of the highest grossing films of the year in the country. Previous films, Interstellar and Inception, also remained enduringly popular Hollywood movies among Chinese audiences. Liu Nandou, a Beijing-based film critic, expects a relatively modest return for The Odyssey, predicting a total box office take of between 300 million and 800 million yuan, or some 44 million to 118 million US dollars. Nolan's films have a ceiling, Liu told The Guardian. The threshold for understanding The Odyssey is extremely high, and it doesn't fit the broad popcorn audience. I so like this expression, popcorn audience. That's our audience, right? Does this movie suit you, my audience? Does my show suit you, my audience? Does my show appeal to my popcorn audience? Let me know again down in the comment section, okay? Back to this movie. So according to The Guardian, The Odyssey is going through a big test in Chinese market, even though it has proved to be successful globally. Why is this case? Why is China considered to be such a rigorous little critic in this global film industry all of a sudden? China used to be following the herd, China used to be buying into a lot of blockbusters. Why is it changing? The Guardian asks, can a movie that has already conquered much of the world still walk into China and say, essentially, hi, remember us? We're Hollywood. You used to love us. And the answer is, we don't know. Maybe. It's a maybe yes, maybe no answer. It's 50-50. The early signs are actually pretty encouraging, like I said earlier. The movie has sold out, but here's where the story gets really interesting. The problem for Hollywood in China is not really that Chinese audiences suddenly stopped liking American movies. That's too simple. The biggest change is that American movies are no longer the default choice. Remember back in the days when we would just go to the cinemas as youngsters and we will be like, you know what, let's just pick an American film, right? It was basically like this default choice. It was a no-brainer that you might just, opt into a American made film, and it turns out it's going to be great. You tended to think that they were cool and that they were going to be up your alley. But those are very different things now. Reuters reported last year that Hollywood films had fallen to roughly 5% of China box office, while Chinese language films accounted for around 80%, again, this number, 80% of annual box office revenue. Reuters also noted that Hollywood's position had already been weakening before the last round of US-China tensions and restrictions on film imports. So for years, a Hollywood blockbuster in China wasn't just a movie, it was everything. It was spectacle, an event, it was a lot of stars, it was this special effects and everything. It was this idea that Hollywood knew how to make the biggest movies in the world, right? You didn't necessarily need to know much about the movie, you just knew this is a big American movie and let's just go. That automatic cultural premium is now much weaker and much more sluggish. And again, this does not mean Chinese audiences have stopped watching Hollywood. Just look at Spider-Man Brand New Day, right? It's still very much doing great. It had one of the strongest Chinese openings for a Hollywood superhero movie in years, and local analysts were projecting a potentially enormous final total. The Hollywood Reporter called it China's biggest superhero opening in 7 years. So Hollywood absolutely can still win, but look at what tends to win. Spider-Man, Nolan, massive franchises, huge stars, right? Movies with a built-in sense of occasion. In other words, Hollywood is becoming much more selective in China. A major American movie can still be a hit, but being American is no longer enough. That's the shift. And this is where Chinese movies come into this picture. So overall, I would say the biggest question isn't can the Odyssey make 50 million in China, 70 million, 100 million US dollars or more? The real question is, can Hollywood still make a movie that Chinese audiences feel they absolutely have to watch? Is it going to come back? Or have we seen the last of it? That's different, because a movie can be successful without being culturally dominant. And I think that's where Hollywood's position in China has really changed. It hasn't disappeared, it hasn't been canceled, it hasn't become irrelevant, it has simply lost its automatic status as the most exciting thing in the room. Now we have our own thing in the room. We have a big elephant in the room that we forgot to address for so long, and now we're realizing that we have a lot of hidden gems, and we're making a lot of gems. We're making them shine in our local markets. I think that's absolutely great for Chinese movies, but again, obviously, we are also going to look forward to more Hollywood movies. So back to the Odyssey. The story of Odysseus is about a guy trying to get home. He spends years traveling through strange places, getting delayed, tested, and distracted, and generally having the worst commutes in human history. I mean, 10 years commutes, consider that miserable. And in a way, Hollywood has its own odyssey going on in China. You used to think of China as one of its biggest growth markets. Now it's trying to figure out how to win back an audience that has other choices, other stars, and other franchises. Increasingly, China has its own blockbuster culture. And Nolan arrives with the biggest movie of his career. So today's China release feels like a routine international opening, and more like a test. So I cannot help but ask, Can American movies survive this odyssey in China? Are they going to come back home? Are you coming back home? 你还回家吃饭吗？And also, how are American movies going to settle into this new phenomenon, right? How are they going to adjust themselves and find probably a different position and niche in Chinese markets? And hopefully, they can still win back, even just a little bit. I am still hopeful. I am still looking forward to exactly how things will go. So stay tuned. I'm gonna update you on other films for sure. So I'm going to give you the lay of the land for sure in the future. Stay tuned. And that brings us to almost the end of today's show. Before we wrap up, I wanna first also thank you guys for listening. I had my very first episode in a month. And generally I felt a lot of support even though I didn't see no comment, but that's all right. I'm still looking forward to you commenting. I'm also grateful that I get back to this mode of producing my podcast again. I feel like this is a very interesting thing to do. And lastly, remember to rate, review me, and try to subscribe. That will really help me and my show. Again, thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will see you next time. All right, bye.